Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely dismantle a really stubborn, widespread myth, the idea of the universal good manager. We often tend to think that great leadership looks exactly the same no matter where you go in the world. But we're going to dive into the data to explore the deep cultural roots behind how we lead. And as you'll see, what makes someone a totally stellar boss in one country might get them literally fired on the spot in another. Let's jump right in with a pretty fascinating example from Brazil to see just how deep this goes. If I ask you, right now, are great managers born or made? Your answer is probably going to depend entirely on where you grew up. In Brazil, a major study found that people believe management is driven almost exclusively by innate charisma. Because they view leadership as this natural-born trait, it's actually incredibly hard to sell management training courses there. I mean, the cultural belief is straightforward. You either have the natural juice to lead or you don't, and sitting in some classroom definitely isn't going to change that. Section 1. 4 Cultural Management Archetypes. So, how do these cultural priorities actually break down in practice? Well, a massive study conducted across an international computer company gave us some answers, and the contrasts are honestly stark. Great Britain values building good relationships and being respected by staff above all else. They score super high there, but barely even mention technical tracking or decision-making. Meanwhile, the USA is heavily result-oriented. They're all about achieving goals, but rank really low on simply being respected. Germany values structural tracking and hitting those goals. And France, they heavily prioritize unilateral decision-making and using resources effectively, essentially seeing the manager as the definitive authority figure. And this brilliantly illustrates how those raw priorities translate into distinct cultural archetypes. We can literally turn that data into recognizable professional personas that dictate how these countries do business. In Great Britain, your ideal manager is the people person, totally focused on morale and workplace harmony. In the US, it's the goal-getter, entirely zeroed in on hitting those targets. Germany gives us the structured professional, perfectly balancing goals with clear, rigorous processes. And France presents the decisive expert, a leader who takes charge and manages resources with absolute, unquestioned authority. Section 2. A costly cultural misunderstanding. Now, these aren't just fun little academic labels. When these wildly different styles collide in the real world, the fallout can be disastrous. Take this famous real-world case study. An American manager needs a report written by his Greek subordinate. The American asks how long it'll take. The Greek employee, who is fully expecting clear direction, says he doesn't know and asks how long it should take. The American pushes back, telling him he's in the best position to analyze the time requirements. Finally, the Greek employee hesitantly guesses 10 days. The American manager, genuinely thinking he's being generous, says, take 15. So is it agreed you will do it in 15 days? Okay, watch how this absolute disaster plays out. In reality, the report required 30 days of regular work, but the Greek employee now has a 15-day deadline. So for the next 2 solid weeks, he works day and night, desperately trying to cram a month's of work into half the time. On day 16, the American demands the report. The exhausted Greek employee says he just needs 1 single day more. The American reprimands him for breaking their agreement, and the immediate result? The Greek employee hands in his resignation right there on the spot. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly why this happened. This wasn't a failure of skill. It was a massive breakdown in a psychological concept called attribution. Attribution is simply how we explain the causes of someone else's behavior. Think about the last time you totally misunderstood a coworker's intentions, right? When we don't understand the cultural lens someone is looking through, we attribute completely wrong motives to their actions, and that leads to a total communication collapse. When we put their perspectives head to head, the tragedy is painfully obvious. The American, he thought he was empowering his employee. He wanted him to participate in setting the schedule and saw that 15-day deadline as a fair, negotiated contract. But look at the Greek employee's view. He felt his boss was entirely incompetent for not just giving a direct order, because in his culture, the boss dictates. Therefore, he saw the 15 days not as some friendly negotiation, but as a strict, impossible command from an authority figure. When he missed it by a single day, he felt deeply insulted that his heroic, sleepless overtime was completely unappreciated. Section 3. Must managers know everything? This whole clash over whether a manager should dictate clear orders or negotiate tasks leads us perfectly into a really fascinating 1983 study by an academic named Laurent. He asked a very simple question. Must managers have precise answers to most questions their staff might raise? And wow, the cultural gap is massive. For instance, there's super low agreement in the West. Only 18% of managers in the US believe they need all the answers. They see their job as just helping staff find them. But on the flip side, a staggering 78% of managers in Japan strongly believe a manager must be an absolute expert who provides exact, precise answers. And actually, this difference starts all the way back in the classroom. The Western approach often features managers with generalist degrees, like history or the arts, who act as facilitators. The Eastern approach heavily features managers who study specific technical subjects or business administration so they can become precise experts. This matters immensely in cross-cultural environments. Just imagine a British manager with a history degree giving a vague, guiding answer to an Indonesian employee who is fully expecting a technical expert. The employee might view the manager as entirely incompetent, while the manager might be sitting there viewing the employee as far too dependent. Section 4. Different cultures, different solutions. All right, now that we've got a handle on these deep-rooted archetypes, psychological attributions, and expectations of expertise, let's put it all into practice with a rapid-fire breakdown. First scenario, your team is facing low morale and a ridiculously high workload. How do you fix it? Well, Germans, being our structured professionals, will immediately look to reorganize the department. The British, our people persons, will focus on offering sympathy and acting as a friend to the staff. The French will step up and make unilateral, clear decisions to cut through the noise. And Americans, the goal-getters, will often just bring in outside consultants or experts to fix the metric. What about dealing with a low-performing colleague? The UK manager turns into a diplomat, quietly looking around for personal problems at home that might be affecting the worker. French and German managers, though, they'll look at the operational system. They'll check the workload and try to remove any bottlenecks or obstacles. The American manager, however, focuses strictly on coaching, talking directly to the person to clarify their goals and demand improved performance. And finally, what about the good times? When celebrating a really big win, like an award, Germany and France prefer to congratulate the collective team together, rewarding the group effort. The UK prefers to take people aside and praise the individual. And the USA? Well, they will reward the individual for sure, but they will also heavily study why that individual succeeded so they can take that exact formula and mass produce the result in other departments. At the end of the day, understanding these cultural blueprints is practically the ultimate survival tool in our globalized world. Assuming your way of leading is the universal way is just a fast track to miscommunication, resentment, and failure. Which leaves me with one final, totally provocative question for you to consider. Based on the archetypes, the data, and the scenarios we've covered in this explainer, how would you describe the management style in your country?